Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. We're going to talk about challenges in proving a short and long term disability claim when you have Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. So, we've talked about what CMT is and how it can affect both movement and sensation. But why is it so difficult to get approved for short and long term disability benefits with this diagnosis? Well, let's start out with a fundamental truth. Insurance companies don't care about the diagnoses, they care about your functionality. So even if your doctor confirms a diagnosis of CMT, that is not necessarily enough. The insurance company wants proof. Now, there is no uniform disability insurance policy or plan. And so you have to get out your policy or plan and read it cover to cover. One of the most important things you need to understand in the context of a claim is what the definition of disability is. Is it the inability to do the material and substantial duties of your occupation? Is it the inability to do one or more of the material duties of your occupation? Is it being unable to perform your occupation as it's performed in the labor market? Is it your inability to do the occupational duties as described by the Dictionary of Occupational Titles? So you got to understand the definition of disability. You also have to understand the term occupation, remembering that there is no uniform definition of occupation either. Different policies, different plans define it differently. It might be the occupation is as you've performed it for your employer. Your occupation is performed in the local economy. Your occupation is performed in the national economy. Your occupation is performed consistent with the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. So disability, occupation, really key definitions. The other definition that you need to concern yourself with is any requirement for objective medical proof of disability. And because ultimately it's your burden to prove that you are disabled as that term is defined in your policy or plan and the level or nature of the proof that you need to submit. So one of the big problems that we have with CMT cases is the intermittent and invisible nature of the symptoms. A person with CMT can walk relatively normal in the morning, then struggle to stand later in the day due to fatigue. They might be able to type or write briefly, but then they experience the cramping, tremors, or weakness that makes it impossible to sustain these tasks. So what disability carriers do is they look at the medical records and they first look at the diagnosis. Okay, they've got CMT, but what is the symptoms? What are the symptoms? Oh, they're able to work, no problem. And then bingo, all of a sudden you're unable to work. The medical records have to speak to what is causing you to all of a sudden be unable to work and do your occupational duties. Additionally, your medical records have to address these good moments and these bad moments. In other words, disability carriers and plans will latch onto these good moments, for example, that morning where you start out great, as evidence that you can work. Now, they may also go so far as to put surveillance on you. I don't want to frighten you, don't want you to be paranoid, but they may look at surveillance and say, well, what you said you couldn't do, what you told the doctor you couldn't do isn't consistent with what's on that video. They're also going to look at your social media accounts, and they're going to be looking for documentation of physical activity that you've done. And even if it's minimal, they will use that to challenge the severity of your condition. So another obstacle is adaptation. People with CMT are often incredibly resilient. You find ways to adapt. You wear braces, you change how you work, you use voice dictation. But insurance companies and disability plans can use that against you, saying, well, if you've managed, with accommodations, what's happened? Why have you stopped working? And again, your medical records need to document that. There's also the issue of specialized testing. Under the terms of most disability policies or plans, you have to get medical treatment that's reasonable and appropriate and generally by a specialist. Now, unlike some conditions where disability is easily confirmed through blood work or scans, CMT is generally in part diagnosed by nerve conduction study tests, EMG, or functional assessments. So in CMT ERISA disability claims, I know that the carrier of the plan is looking for nerve conduction study tests or functional assessments to document person's ability or inability to do their own occupation or ultimately any occupation. Now, because CMT is genetic and slowly progressive, many people will delay filing that application for disability until they're truly at their breaking points. And by that point in time, their earnings have declined, weakening their case. And that can be a problem because if you are trying to adapt and you reduce your hours generally to less than 30 hours, most disability carriers or plans say, well, too bad, so sad. You're not covered anymore because you have to be what's called actively at work. And again, disability policies um, will define that differently. So let me give you an example. A software engineer with CMT might have kept working long hours despite foot pain, fatigue, and reduced sensation in the hands. Eventually, this software engineer says, I can't do this anymore. I need breaks. I have difficulty walking from the parking lot to my office or going to meetings, or even if I'm working from home, I'm falling all over the place and stumbling. And it's not just the dog. And when that claim is filed, I will promise you the first thing the carrier or plan is going to say is, well, you were doing this job for years. Why did you stop now? It's really clear that there's homework that needs to be done by you, even though you're trying to adapt and even though you're continuing to try to work. Your medical records have to tell a story, not only of your diagnosis, but your functional decline over time. So, how do you build a case that's going to stand up to this scrutiny? We're going to go over that next. Let's take a quick break.